Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Long time no see. So, what have I been doing in the meantime? Well, I'll give you a little hint. I've been crocheting, and I made this absolutely lovely shawl. It is from a pattern by a woman named Robin here on YouTube, and her channel is Hooked by Robin. I have put the link to this particular shawl down below. This is made with yarn that I purchased at Goodwill for super cheap, and it was a 1-pounder skein of yarn. And then I had to purchase more because I actually didn't have enough in the 1-pounder. But the funny thing is like I purchased it at Walmart, and I think it was $6.99. The actual whole bag of yarn that the first skein was in was only $6.99. So it was quite a steal. So it was good to find out that it was quite a steal. What else have I been doing? Well, how about we look over here? Don't want to make you guys seasick. See that back there? I was going to actually wear that shirt because the shirt's finished. I don't know if you guys remember this shirt. I made it a couple years back. I did it with a longer sleeve, and I never wore it because I didn't like the long sleeve. I shortened the sleeve. I was going to wear it today, and it's, hello, how are you? I was going to wear it today, and it's maybe mid-40s. We had unbelievably warm weather leading up to the holiday, which is, by the way, why I'm wearing my shawl that I made, because it's cold in my apartment. Even though it's not ice cold outside, it's still nippy. We had really warm weather, and it just switched over to this kind of cool weather. You know, it's kind of the last hurrah for winter, I guess. We're getting that, and then next to it is a brown skirt that I made to go with it. And yeah, I'm working on a 1930s outfit. And when it's done, I promise to post something about that. So speaking of the 1930s, I also read this book since last time I saw you guys. Let me see if I can make sure that you can see it. There we go. The Lost Art of Dress. If you are interested in fashion history, and to a certain extent, feminism, this is a great book. It is about the women who were hired by the USDA to create first an extension program that was part of the USDA extension programs. If you're not familiar with that, I'll explain it. I'll do a brief explanation. Sorry, let me just adjust that a little bit. Back in the, really around the turn of the century, I would say 1910, around that time, you had what we now call the USDA, but it wasn't quite the same as the USDA that was even later, like during the New Deal. But it was a government-sponsored extension program where they were teaching women how to can food safely. That was their big thing, was canning food safely. There was some child rearing, and there was just a smidge of eugenics involved in that, by the way. They were starting to talk about kind of genetics, what they understood, and a little bit of eugenics. Not quite like Nazi style eugenics, but a little tiny bit. But basically, these programs were set up by the government to keep people healthy, and they were specifically aimed at rural communities. Because rural communities, a lot of times, even much later, didn't have access to running water or indoor plumbing. So these were a lot of different things. So who did they hire to run these? They hired the dress doctors. Now I'll explain why they're called the dress doctors in a minute. These women were fascinating. One of them, and I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, was actually an MIT educated biochemist. But she couldn't get work because she was a woman. Because in 1910, a biochemist, even though she went to MIT and she was this smart woman, couldn't get a job. So she ended up getting a job with the government, teaching women how to safely can fruits and vegetables, how to practice basic hygiene methods to keep their infants and babies healthy and keep generally their whole family healthy. And that's what these extension programs were. Now, during this time, they would give these surveys to the women that were taking these extension classes. And they kept talking about wanting to know about fashion, about how to dress, how to sew better, what were good, color combination, all kinds of stuff. And these women started to devise kind of the idea of a capsule wardrobe. In fact, they talk about it a little bit, the capsule wardrobe, and they specifically had like what we would now call like fashion rules. And that's what they did. They started to implement these programs where they taught women like how to dress, like, how to combine colors well, how to dress, how to figure out what's going to look good on you, how to take your measurements so you know what's, going to look appropriate and just look balanced on you, right? It was really fascinating, and that's why this woman coined the phrase. The author, let me get this closer so you can see her name. She started calling them the dress doctors, and their information was absolutely fabulous. I'm going to read just a little tiny bit of it if I can find it quickly, because they had some basic rules. They were all a little bit different, but one of the things I liked about them was she compiled kind of a short list of their rules, and she calls it the wisdom of the dress doctors. And it's practice the art of dress. You may be self-conscious because you are far better dressed than the people around you, but maybe you can inspire them. Isn't that great? So these were basically like, these women were like influencers before there was social media. I love this. Mark your day by the pleasures of dress. Change in some small way for a dinner out. Own something comfortable and beautiful to slip on at the end of the day. By the way, I love these rules. I like all of them. I think they're great. It's a lot of self-care in its own weird way, like the way we describe these would be described as self-care. Less is more. So long as you value beauty over novelty, 5 outfits is all you need for work, or maybe just one. So a lot of minimalism right there. Dress for the people you love. Yes, the people who love you will forgive those torn gym shorts, but don't ask them if you can help it. And I love that one. Balance concealment with revealment. Flesh exposed all the time is far less effective than flesh revealed on special occasions and for a privileged few. People who receive privileges should be appropriately grateful. Celebrate girlhood and womanhood and the difference between them. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that was something that I thought was really interesting. I so enjoyed this book that I actually tracked down a copy of one of the dress doctors' vintage books that she wrote. Now, these women later went on in the 30s during the New Deal and well into the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They created what we would now call the home economics kind of curriculum that was available only to girls. The book does talk about their demise, which she kind of blames it on feminism, but I have to be honest, their demise was really 1960s and the youth quake and the youth culture. That's what killed them. And we'll also talk about that in a minute. But I love this book, and I'm going to show you the reason why I love this book. It has so much information for women on choosing color. And this is one of those things that I think all women have kind of dealt with, where you're putting on, an outfit and you have like 2 greens and a yellow, and you're like, oh, does this go? You don't really, do you look like a piece of candy or do you look okay? So, and this book was just great. And some of the things that they talk about in this book, and actually she talks about in the original book, are things like, make sure your shoes are comfortable. Don't pick style over comfort when it comes to shoes, because if you can't walk in your shoes, you're going to look stupid. It doesn't matter how cool the shoes are, which I totally get because I've done that. They talk about the real difference between something that doesn't look great on someone that's a teenager, but looks great on a woman who's older and more mature, because she is older and more mature and more filled out. And how something that is made for a teenager isn't going to look good on a 50-year-old woman. And, it's kind of sad, but I feel like we have gotten away from that. But so we'll talk about that in a minute too, because that's something that came up this week when I was working on patterns. Now, these patterns are from Miss Amy at Requiem Salvage. Her link is below. I do know that she just bought a bunch of jewelry. So if you like vintage jewelry, head on over to her site and check out her Whatnot night. She does a Whatnot night on Thursday called Requiem Salvage, where she sells all this jewelry. When I went to pick up the patterns at her house, and I would say, I think there's close to 1,000. We'll see, because I'm not even I've barely made a dent in these patterns. Like, we're only looking at kids' patterns today, and I have a whole stack. When I went to pick up the patterns, she had taken kind of the front room of her house and turned it into, it looks like a jewelry salon or a jewelry store. That's the only thing I can say. It's just stacked with jewelry. I had to cover my eyes because my magpie instinct of all the sparkly stuff was just going off when I walked into her house. It was crazy, but beautiful. And she has unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable. Sorry, having a cup of tea because it got so cold. So without further ado, let's talk about patterns. So as we were just talking about, this kind of movement that there used to be where women's clothing were women's clothing, and clothing made for teens and clothing made for little girls, never the twain shall meet, right? Like they weren't the same. And without further ado, let's talk about what I found in this lot of patterns. If you look at that closely, can you say how that says young junior teens? I found a whole bunch of patterns like this one that are made for teens. And what that means is the sizing is really different. I'm going to let you get a close-up of. Can you see the sizing chart for teens? It's like a 7-8, right? So it's between the two sizes. Whereas when you look at the Mrs. one, it's a full 8. There's no percentages for the measurements. It's a hard 8, right? It's not a 7-8, so that it's kind of right in between. And there was a whole plethora of these, so many so that I decided that they needed their own subcategory. So you will notice if you look at my Etsy page that there's a new subcategory under children's that says teens, tweens, teen boys, because there were so many of these patterns. So we're going to see a lot of them today. But with that said, I found this pattern. Sorry about this one being in plastic. There we go. They're the same kind of like line, I guess. Now, they don't specifically say they're teen sized, but can you really see your 40-year-old mom running around in this? I can't. And they had special information in the packaging that was how to make these. So these were really beginner patterns, and I think they were really aimed at teens. So I also included patterns like that I found. And then we just had your plain old 1970s. It was truly a glorious time. So looking at these, there were several patterns that I thought, oh, I think I had that. I think my mom bought that for me. My mom was a big fan of Sears. Let's have a moment of silence for Sears and Roebuck. For anybody younger out there that doesn't know what I'm talking about when I talk about Sears and Roebuck, Sears and Roebuck was from the late 1800s till really the mid 2000s, was absolutely what Amazon is today. Sears and Roebuck started as a catalog. It was like this. I mean, it's huge, huge catalog that was mailed to your house in, I think right after the Civil War is when they got their start. And you could buy anything from a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And I am not kidding. There are houses still in this country that are Sears and Roebuck houses. You could pick out the house you liked. They would send you all of the lumber, nails, roofing materials, windows, everything on a flatbed train car. You could opt in and buy the fittings for the kitchen. You could buy the bathroom fixtures. All of it would be sent to you, and you built your house and it came with instructions, because back in the day, a lot of men knew how to build houses. They knew how to do construction. To this day, there are Sears and Roebuck houses all over the country that are being preserved by different organizations. Later, they did drop the Roebuck and they just became Sears. I think that was around the 60s, maybe 50s. Unfortunately, they kind of fell when other online companies became more prosperous, like Amazon, which I never understood this, because honestly, how is Amazon so absolutely prolific when they are basically using the playbook that was Sears and Roebuck? You could buy anything through Sears and Roebuck. I mean, I've even heard that if you were looking for something and you couldn't find it in the catalog, you could write to Sears and Roebuck and then obviously later call them, and they would try and get it for you. They had, over the years, they had lots and lots of their own in-brand products, kind of the same way Amazon does. They had Craftsman tools, which were known as really the best tools that you could buy. If the tool broke, I think, or even if you lost it, you could go to any Sears store and they would replace your Craftsman tools. They had the Die-Hard battery, which another one. The Die-Hard battery, if you had it for X amount of years or miles and it failed, they would replace it for free. And then they sold other stuff. I remember for a while they had Land's End, right before kind of their last hurrah. They were selling Land's End items. So they had everything. And my mother, being a divorcee, being a single mom school teacher, credit cards were not very easy to get for women back then. In fact, they weren't easy at all. And the first credit card she ever had was Sears and Roebuck, because she used to go to the Sears store, and it was where she bought her pantyhose, because she had to wear pantyhose to work. So yeah, there you go. Little Gloria history there. A lot of cottagecore, by the way. The 70s was definitely the height of cottagecore, let me tell you. Whew. But yeah, it's kind of sad when you think about the fact, like, how did Sears fail when they wrote the playbook on, online shopping, or, non brick and mortar shopping, and somehow Amazon is winning at this? Like, how is that possible? It's one of those head scratchers, but I do occasionally miss Sears. I got to tell you, many memories of being in Sears with my family. One in particular, not so great. I remember was there with my grandpa, and he was talking to my mom, and they were buying me jeans for school. And my grandfather had a fairly thick Italian accent all of his life, even though his English was really quite good. And someone said Dago under their breath, standing near us. Yeah, because in spite of what people would like to think, this entire country is made of immigrants, and we're not always very nice to immigrants, even though somehow we're all immigrants. It is another head scratcher for you. But, we walked away and ignored it. And my grandfather he just kind of brushed it off. He was like, whatever, he didn't care. But yeah, Sears and Roebuck. Talk about a trip down memory lane. I know that I've shown you guys buttons before. I absolutely know that I have several sets of buttons still on the cards, and the cards still say Sears. I don't know what happened to this pattern. I saw that too. It looks like the bottom of a bucket. I can't get it off. It's whatever it is really ingrained on there. I know. I don't like kids. I don't like kids patterns. They don't sell, but I'm hoping that these will. What I've been doing is, if you are interested in any of these kids patterns, they are in the tab under children's. If it's something you saw that is a teen pattern, it will be under the teen, tweens, teen boys. And some of it, there's a little bit of sleepwear in here, and there's a little bit of bathing suit type stuff in here. That's obviously under bathing suits, sleepwear, because it's very specific stuff. But if you love the 1970s, take a look. I am trying to finish putting up a bunch of women's patterns today. They are truly amazing. We will be going over them next week. This isn't, by the way, this is another teen girls pattern, which I can see this is such a teen girls pattern, right? I mean, I can't wear that. I have to wear a bra with everything. I can't wear that. It was interesting though, when I was reading this book, it wasn't a thought I'd really had for a while, but because everybody, well, first of all, I don't really think people have too much style anymore. I feel like everything is pajama bottoms, sweat bottoms, a hoodie, and, your hair pulled back. That's like everybody's uniform, right? And something that looks like a slipper, but apparently isn't a slipper. It's a shoe. Yeah, I worked with a woman who showed up one day when we were having our heavy duty ice storms, and she slipped on the ice, and she was wearing these shoes that we're not supposed to wear, that my boss has told us many times not to wear. They are by Uggs. And to me, they look like Uggs slippers. She insisted they're not slippers. Whatevs, man. But she was the one falling on the ice, not me. I had on waterproof kind of like hiking style boots, because that's kind of what our bosses told us she would like us to wear. Either sneakers or some type of boot type shoe, something, that laces up, something that's got a closed heel, all of that, whatever. But yeah, it's really interesting though. What I was trying to say was, in this book, they talk about like, it's okay that young girls get to wear all this stuff, right? That you maybe are too much, you're too old for now. You just are. Because there are so many options that are going to look good on you that aren't going to look, they're going to look odd on a young girl. One of the things they talk about in here is women having suits, having really well-tailored, nice suits. And I get it. That totally makes sense to me. When I used to work in an office, I only had really two suits. I had one that was a suit that had, that was a skirt suit, and I had one that was a suit that had trousers. And then I mixed and matched the blazers. But, when I went in with my one suit, because it was a beautiful suit, it was, like this gorgeous, like really dark gray, almost looked like black. And that skirt. And I used to wear it when we had like meetings with the big honchos. And right on down the line, every department I walked through. Yeah, the Ugg slippers are so ugly. It's not surprising they're called Uggs, because they're ugly. Yeah. But when I used to wear that suit, not only did I feel really put together, I felt great in that suit. I'm going into these meetings and I'm dealing with like the head honchos, the board of director guys, and I felt like I could hold my own, because that was like a power suit. It really was. Oh, here's an interesting thing. I only found a couple of these, but they're kind of sad. I did put these in with tween girls. Can you see what that says? It says chubbies. So, it says child girls and chubbies. So these are what we would now call tweens. I guess if you were a mom and you had a daughter who was a teen and she was a little stout, because a lot of girls go through that phase. They get a little chubby, and then, they get into high school and the hormone fairy, visits, and all of a sudden they have a figure, right? That's what happens. It's completely normal. So I guess it was good to have patterns that you knew were going to fit her, that were going to be easier to fit on her because she was in that chubby stage. We call it tweens now. So that's where patterns like that would be. I would put them under my teens, tweens, and boy and teen boy patterns. But yeah. But yes, if you are interested in any of these are in the children's area. What I've been doing is just going through, and I've been actually posting these by editing things that I had that really weren't selling. I would add these patterns. I would update the photo and change the listing to these patterns instead. Oh, I know. Everything's so groovy, isn't it? So groovy. Yes, you can make your son that fat necktie. Isn't that great? Then we have this. A lot of pinafore patterns, and not just for girls, like a lot of young women's pinafore type patterns. A lot of that going on. Like I said, 70s. The cottagecore era, definitely. I thought this was so cute. It's a cowboy shirt. It's unisex. Yeah, I know. So many of these things. This one especially. I remember looking at this. I really think I had this. I think I had the version in green with the short sleeves. I'm really sure that I had that. And then there was stuff like this, like, because every young girl wants this. Why? Because this nightgown makes us look like a fairy princess, and that's all we really want. At the end of the day, that's all girls really want, is they just want to be able to dress like a fairy princess. So that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know about women right there summed up. We just all want to dress like a fairy princess at the end of the day. Yeah, the problem with these, I love these kids patterns. These are toddler and baby patterns, but they don't sell because nobody sews for kids anymore. Some of the patterns for the older girls, maybe like the dresses that are gowns and stuff, but yeah, nobody really sends, it takes the time to sew for kids anymore. And I get it, because between the price of the fabric and the time, it's cheaper to just. Do you love sewing? Yeah, for your kids. Oh, you love seeing. I get it. Yeah. See, I don't sew for other people. I can barely get through. Like, it took me forever to do the sleeves on that shirt, and the skirt's taken me like 3 weeks. But I've also been crocheting. I've been kind of using crocheting as a palette cleanser, and also reading that book, but using crocheting as a palette cleanser from patterns and sewing and everything involved with sewing, because I was getting really burned out. The nice thing about the crocheting is I can just take it into my bedroom. I can watch TV. Like, I can crochet for an hour while I'm watching TV before I fall asleep. I can just take the whole thing, put it right next to the bed in this little basket I have, and that's it. Unlike sewing, where I need the sewing room, I need the sewing machine. I love that there's a girl's 3-piece suit. You got to love this, right? And it's actually like a jumpsuit. It looks like a vest, but it's actually a jumpsuit. It's pretty cool. And, we didn't forget the boys. The boys are groovy too. Is this one of the ones? This is just, there were a lot of them that said teen boys on them. So I guess that trend was also something they did for teen boys. It wasn't just for girls. I know this is going on forever. I told you, there's tons of pattern. This is so cute. The Paddington Bear little applique up there is included with this jumpsuit for kids. Yeah, this is the only one I really have. The other ones I'm actually using. Like, I have hats and ear warmers and stuff like that I'm using when I drive the bus when it was cold. I made myself a ear warmer for Christmas that was like this really red, bulky. Oh, by the way, is that Brooke Shields? I think it's Brooke Shields. When we get into the adult patterns, I'm pretty sure that's Brooke Shields. When we get into the adult patterns, you will see the trend of so many different patterns have Susan Day on them. Susan Day, who was Lori on Partridge Family, and then later she was on LA Law, and I can't remember what her name was on LA Law. It was like early, it was late 80s, early 90s. I don't remember. I should just look it up at some point. And then she did some stuff after that, but then I think she basically just retired from acting. I haven't seen Susan Day in years. I think last time I saw her was some Lifetime movie in the late 90s. Oh, I love this. If you ever watched the cartoon The Venture Brothers, this is a speed suit. So some of you who have watched The Venture Brothers will get the reference to the speed suit. And then there's just stuff like this. That applique is also included for the paintbrush. How cute is that little dress? So cute. A lot of them, this is another one, the transfers for that embroidery were included. Several of the adult patterns that I have some type of transfer that goes with the embroidery that's shown like on the dress or the blouse or the pants or wherever. It feels like the 70s were kind of the last great hurrah for some of these sewing companies, because soon after that you can see there's a lot less detail in their patterns. Oh, okay, yeah, here's a perfect example of something that you can wear as a teenager, but you're not going to wear as a 40-year-old, not unless you'd like to be, committed to an asylum by your family members. Yeah. But it's sad that we don't have that designation anymore. Now it's just, women's clothes, kids' clothes. Yes, that's a vest, by the way. That is a vest. It doesn't really look like a vest, but it's almost like somewhere between a poncho and a vest. And if you look on the back, you can see you can do it in a fringe style. Yep, teen boys. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Nothing like a shorty jumpsuit or a jumpsuit that has knickers. And more knickers, because we just loved them back in the 70s, not to mention hot pants. I'm not sure my mother would have ever let me leave the house in this outfit, but I don't know. Yeah, they're really short. Yeah. And this is the kind of stuff that I remember definitely having. I really feel like I had this dress right here, like really similar to that dress. I remember it. And if you were like me, I come from a Catholic family, so Easter was a big deal. It was also when my mother would buy us the whole shebang, right? We got the new shoes, we got the gloves, the little hats, because you have to wear a hat. You used to have to wear a hat in the Catholic Church, the whole shebang. So I thought it would be a good time to bring out some of these truly amazing outfits. This is another one that's for teen girls, obviously for teen girls. And that was it. So I think next week we will do some adult patterns. It depends on how many I can get through, because it's really time consuming. I have to go through them. I have to make sure none of them are cut. So far, none of them are cut. I believe that this was Amy had emptied this out of a storage unit. That was a whole situation with a woman who had died. And this was, I guess, her girlfriend. And she was definitely a hoarder. And there were 7 storage units. And, Amy had some tales about what was in these storage units. But so much of this stuff is just, I think it's brand new. I think that she somehow got her hands on someone's store that went out of business and got all their 70s patterns. It's just weird to me that they're just 70s. And it's only about 1971 to about 1977. There's nothing else. I found, I think, 2 patterns from the 60s that were in the women's patterns. We'll see them next week, hopefully, if I can get everything done next week. It may have to be the weekend after, only because I want to have a fair amount of patterns to show you guys if we're going to do a little pattern haul video. So anyway, I will keep in touch. Until next week, I hope wherever you are that your weather is better than ours, which is sunny, but it could be warmer. Anyway, until then, have a great week. Absolutely have a great holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate. I know it was actually yesterday. But yeah, until then, have a great week, and I will see you next time.